Lost in a place he had been hundreds of times, Danny Olmes hung his head in surrender as he realised he wasn't whom he wanted to be and his life wasn't headed in the right direction. Years of drinking led Danny to sobriety, and once sober, he understood that the alcohol had been masking his view of the world. Once he changed his lens, he noticed how much beauty and love there is out there. Everyday experiences can become extraordinary, finding the miracles in the mystery and the meaning in the mundane. Maintaining who Danny is in a world that is constantly trying to change him is one of his greatest accomplishments. And Memoirs of an Ordinary Guy, written by Danny himself, is an inspiring read of finding love and joy in ordinary, everyday experiences. So today I'm with Danny. How are you?
I'm doing well, Talia. How are you doing?
I'm doing well as well. So where in the world are you?
I'm in Washington, D.C., or just outside in the suburbs of Washington, D.C., Northern Virginia.
Very nice, very nice. I've not been that way yet, but Washington is on my list. So I feel like there's a lot of places on the list, but that's kind of, I think that's in the one of the most interesting and fun parts of life is to, have a list and see where it takes you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Where are you in the world?
So I'm in London. I'm in London. So yeah, we're still in the phase at the moment where we are defrosting the cars. So
Right.
I don't feel like I've ever had to defrost a car so much in my life before until this year. So it's this is where we are at the moment.
Yeah.
So obviously we're going to talk all about your story. Start kind of wherever you want to start, and the floor is over to you.
Sure. No, absolutely. And thank you for having me. I'm grateful for the opportunity. I think writing a book and putting your life story into the world creates a lot of opportunities, and this is one of them. I'm certainly grateful for the opportunity to meet people like you, to reach people that might be struggling in the way that I struggled. We all deal with different things in life, but I think some of the common lessons are there.
Yeah.
All the struggles have kind of similar roots in one way or another. So I'm just grateful to tell my story and to do it in a very sincere and direct way. I think that maybe is what's lacking in the world a little bit. And it's very fun and meaningful to connect with people. Real human connections, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Even virtually though, because there's still, even though it's virtually, it's connecting with the right people about the right, the similar things or even dissimilar things, but it's being able to share, whatever's going on in your story in the right way.
The first couple chapters of my book walk the reader through a very dark period of my life. And that period was one where I struggled with alcohol. And if I go back to like my college days or my high school days, or maybe since the first sip of alcohol I ever had,
Yeah.
on the outside, it looked like I drank like most people, and being a high school student and a college student, that's sort of like, it's the binge drinking, it's the drinking to get drunk. It's it's just kind of letting loose. And from the outside, I probably looked like any average, any average student or any average partier. But I always knew that I did not drink the same way, that I did not have an off switch, so to speak. That when I got started, it was very difficult for me to stop.
Yeah.
And, that started pouring over into my adult life a bit. And, I was never a daily drinker. I didn't crave it. I didn't really like the way it made me feel, to be quite honest with you. But at the time, I was somewhat dissatisfied with where I was in life. Wasn't finding too many things that were interesting me, professionally. A lot of my relationships that I had from college and high school, people start to go their separate ways, and you start to, have to create a life of your own. Well, I was very dissatisfied with where that was, and having a drink did help that out. It was a bit of an escape. But again, I did not drink like most people. I wasn't a daily drinker. Again, I didn't crave it. But once I got started, it was very difficult to stop. And where that ended up, making a long story short, where that ended up is it ended up in 3 trips to the emergency room and a kind of an overnight or 2-day stay at a drug and alcohol rehab facility in my hometown. so I had some, I had a year there where there was a pretty significant downward spiral in my life. I remember one event in particular, kind of before all that happened. I was at a local driving range, and golf was something that I enjoyed very much. And I went to the driving range, and I was hitting balls, but every ball that I hit was less satisfying than one before. It was terribly hot outside. I was, very hungover. I was sweating bullets. I wasn't feeling good to begin with. But I came to like a momentary pause on the mat there at the driving range, and I used this Star Wars reference in the book because there's that scene in Star Wars where Luke Skywalker looks across the desert, and he's somewhat frustrated with where he is in life, and he's asking his grandparents that he wants to go off to this school and be a fighter pilot, and they say no, you got to stay on the farm and be a farmer for another season. And he looks across that desert to that dueling setting suns of Tatooine, and that Force theme by John Williams starts playing. It's that iconic moment for him, right? It's that quintessential moment where he takes the next step in his life. And I had that similar type of experience at the driving range. And just before I had this experience, I started getting this odd sense of disorientation, like the feeling you get lost when, the feeling you get when you're somewhere where you don't know where you are, where you're lost. Except I was lost in a place that I had been hundreds of times. And again, I had this moment on the mat, and I gazed across the horizon, and I sort of just hung my head in surrender because I knew that I wasn't who I wanted to be. I knew that my life was not headed in the right direction. And it was from that point forward that, I had an odd sense that I had to leave. And, it's a much longer story of what happened after that, but it led me off in the right direction. At the same time, it led me into a tailspin and a downward spiral that I just talked about. But it was the direction I needed to go. And, it was just it was an odd day, but it led me, to where I needed to go.
Do you think it was an epiphany of sorts?
I do, because, I had some experiences that, I never left a bucket of balls on, half hit. I've never had that feeling of being lost, and all that sort of culminated into one moment where I was just, and then I had this odd feeling that I had to leave. Well, that me leaving at that particular moment at that exact time led me to a very chance encounter with an old friend. And it led me back down sort of a reestablishing of my faith, and into some environments that helped me, get out of the situation that I was in. Very much a personal epiphany.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting because you said the moment you left at that exact time, you then had the chance encounter and you had this feeling to leave. Everything happens for a reason, I, strongly believe. And so in what you just said is, you had to leave for that reason, and then, it led you on to, where you are now. And kind of what are some of the things then that, it did lead you on to?
It led me back on a path of faith. I was raised as a Christian. I've weaved my way through many, many different faith traditions in the Protestant faiths. I've explored, I've read hundreds of books on hundreds of different subjects and thousands of pages of material on religion and spirituality, and even on some, New Age philosophies. So it very much catalyzed an interest in spirituality and faith. So that was one. That brought me into a comfort with the world that didn't come from me. I can't speak for anybody else, but that investigation cured a lot of that dissatisfaction that I talked about. I've said in a number of times that you can't, you have to explore the world to be comfortable in it. And faith in that curiosity in something higher. I was always I wanted to be a physicist when I was growing up. I was fascinated with the world around me. The awesome complexity and wonder of the universe is just mind-boggling. And that's what I wanted to do with my life. And as I started to read a lot more about religion and spirituality, it's those things actually kind of converged on one another. And it just brought about a comfort and a peace that is hard to replicate with other things. And I believe that, alcohol cannot compete with the feeling that I have now as a result of those things. So that, it's pretty profound in my life.
Yeah, absolutely. And then obviously, it led you to becoming sober, correct?
Right. So my sobriety date was, if I can remember this now, January 21st, 2006. So
Okay.
it came up on 17 years of not having a drip of alcohol. I never missed it. Like I said, I didn't even like the way it made me feel. I remember sitting in bed on so many different nights and asking myself, why do I keep doing this? Why I don't feel good. It's masking such a beautiful world that's out there. And I wrote this book on the subtlety of life. Well, alcohol and, whatever obsessive behaviors that we have in life can start to view that world through a different lens. And why do that? There's so much beauty and so much love in the world that I didn't want anything to affect that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the thing as well, is people don't realize how beautiful the world is and how many amazing things happen, as soon as you open your eyes in the morning. And a lot of it can be masked by so many different things. So it's definitely a really interesting concept. And then obviously you've written your most recent book, correct? The Memoirs of an Ordinary Guy.
That's correct. Yep.
So was your, obviously all your story and everything that happened, that was the inspiration behind wanting to write it?
A lot of it, yes. All of the things that I, just talked about are stuff that comprise the first several chapters of the book. But then it sort of transitions into my experience sort of as an ordinary person and turning the ordinary into the extraordinary. The experience that inspired me to write the book was I was pulling into my parking garage at work one day. This is about 10 years ago. And I actually backed into the parking space, which was fortuitous. I didn't usually do that. I usually pulled forward into a parking space, but luckily enough, I backed into the parking space and I saw in front of me something that absolutely changed my life, but it was quite ordinary. It was this elderly woman with a Mickey Mouse shirt walking by the front of my car. And in her hand was something that just absolutely changed my life. It was a gym bag. And this woman had to be somewhere between 90 and 95 years old. I was just stunned by the scene in front of me. And it gave me the chills. And when I say the chills, it was like a ringing from head to toe. I could actually hear the energy that was kind of surging through my body. And the only thing that I drew from that was that I had this experience with an otherwise total stranger on just an average day. And how many beautiful things have I missed? And I came to the conclusion that if I can have that experience, I could have it over and over again.
Yeah.
And I committed myself to keeping a small journal of experiences like that when you keep your eyes open and you view the world a little differently and you're patient, the most wonderful things come to you. And they're life-changing, right?
Yeah. And I think because you discuss about it being, like you said, like, everyday experiences, but also it being an extraordinary life. Yeah.
I mean, I not to be critical of, there's a lot of wonderful books that are written in the self-help genre and the inspirational, motivational genre. But a lot of the ones that I've read, they're of things where people have done extraordinary things, whether it's an athletic achievement or running a business or making a lot of money. And I don't know if that's accessible for everybody. We're not all going to be a millionaire. We're all not going to be the president of a big company. We're not going to run ultra marathons and break records. So how do you turn the ordinary experience into an extraordinary life? And that's what I've written about. I think the one piece of feedback that I've gotten from everybody is they're like, this reminds me of my story. This reminds me of the things that I have long forgotten because they're fleeting moments in life.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I think that's a really interesting point that you said, though, is because a lot of the people that maybe we look up to, or a lot of the people that we see in the media, they are they are CEOs, or they are, you know, people that are running ultras and smashing records, etc., etc. And a lot of people, obviously, you know, if you dream big enough and you dream hard enough, 100% you get there. But a lot of the time people do sit there and they think, but, you know, how am I going to do something like this? And it's finding kind of the understanding of, you know, like you said, it's just the everyday experiences can be extraordinary. And a lot of people don't realize that, is I think what I'm trying to say, is that people don't realize that some of the smallest things that happen outside your window are absolutely amazing. You just need to maybe understand why or how, and they can help you to achieve these incredible dreams.
Yeah. And for me, what was the end goal? The end goal was never about money or fame or breaking records. The greatest accomplishment was, one, maintaining who I was as an individual. You know, Ralph Waldo Emerson says, you know, to maintain, to stay who you are in a world that is trying to make you anything but that is the greatest accomplishment. I'm paraphrasing there, but that's basically what he said. And the other greatest accomplishment is finding peace and love in your life. And that is something everybody can do.
Yeah.
That is a choice at the end of the day of how you view the things that happen to you. That choice, that freedom is really never taken away.
Yeah. But again, you're right when you say the world, whether it's us, you know, social circles, our families, you know, our inner circles, outer circles, whoever it is, the world is trying to make us people that we're not, to fit in, you know, to conform to things that, you know, maybe some of us don't want to or shouldn't, but we end up sometimes just on the, you know, the spiral and the loop, and we kind of can get sucked into it. And it's kind of establishing and understanding that you are a whole person and you can be exactly who you want to be and do the things you exactly want to do. Just because your best friend isn't doing them, or your family isn't doing it, or the guys at work do it differently, so what? You know, if you want to do it, you can.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the chapters in my book is entirely about the self-perceptions or the perceived weaknesses that I had. I thought that's what the world was telling me, right? I thought the world was wanted me to be the things that I felt that I was not very good at. There was a lot of different things, but as it turned out, and I got to a place in my own life, I didn't want to be any of those things anyway. They weren't who I was.
Yeah.
That's what I thought the world was telling me.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think self-honesty and self-reflection is very important. That's, you know, a common theme that I write about all throughout my book.
Yeah. And also you discuss miracles, don't you? And how people can make their own miracles.
Yeah. Actually, I start off a chapter, the first chapter that I write about, you know, seeing the old woman. Well, the quote that precedes that chapter is from the movie Bruce Almighty, which is, there's a scene where Morgan Freeman and Jim Carrey are sort of debating what a miracle is, and you know, is this a miracle versus that? Does this person deserve a miracle versus that person? And Morgan Freeman looks at him and he says, a single mom who's working 2 jobs and still finds the time to take her kid to soccer practice, you know, that's a miracle. The teenager who says no to drugs and yes to an education, that's a miracle.
Yeah.
And it's the last line that I like the most. He says, people want me to do everything for them, but what they don't realize is that they have the power. And he says, you want to see a miracle, son, you know, be the miracle.
Yeah.
And I write a lot about everyday miracles because I think miracles are mostly of our own making.
And I think that's the thing as well. It's the perception and the perspective about those things. You know, it's about, you were saying, you know, the woman that has, you know, the 2 kids and still takes her kids to soccer practice. You know, some people might look at that and they'll be like, how's that a miracle? But it is. Yeah. You know, it is. And I think that's, again, something that people need to look into, you know, with their own lives. Like we were saying, you know, just what's going on outside your window, or when you wake up in the morning, those little things that you are doing, those tiny little habits or whatever they are, a lot of them are miracles. You just need to understand that and see it from a different point of view. Because I think a lot of people won't see it from that. They'll see it from maybe more of a, this is mundane, or this is, this is my life. But actually, some of them are miracles.
Yeah. I mean, the one quote used a word from the chapter, I think that whatever created us, whether you consider it God or the universe or whatever, I think that what makes them the most proud is for us to find what I said, the miracles in the mystery,
Yeah.
and meaning in the mundane. And I think you hit on it, like that. How do you make sense out of an ordinary life?
Yeah.
How do you get inspired? By everything that you see day to day. Everything that you see is an astonishing miracle.
Mm.
And I think if more people viewed that way, I think we'd have less situations like we do in the world, frankly. And I write a lot about, you talk about the media, you talk about just the world in general. We get bombarded with information on a daily basis, and a lot of it's negative. So I've written a book that hopefully will inspire people to see the positive in the things that they see around them. See the love and the energy that is there.
Yeah. I think that's the thing as well, is love. I think that's a really important word. And I don't just mean the love for your partner, because you can give love to anything, anyone, anything, anything. And I think it's bringing love into your day as well in almost everything you do. I think it's really important. And I don't think a lot of people realize how important love is. Like I said, not just for your partner.
Yeah. I told you earlier, I'm a huge physics geek, and the awesome complexity of nature in the universe is beyond human understanding. It is something that even the greatest mathematicians and physicists on the planet are scratching their head as to how it works this way. But I say that, in response to what you just said, that love is the language of the universe. It's the language of the world. It's something that everybody can understand. Mm-hmm. It's not some esoteric equation on paper.
Yeah.
And I think that we were built to have that singular understanding in life.
Yeah. And that can be anything. That can be putting on your headphones and dancing to your favorite song, but just with so much passion. That's what I mean. It can be anything, but just feeling or giving or showing some sort of love and appreciation is extremely important.
Absolutely.
So where can people find your book?
So I have a website up. It's www.dannyolmes.com. And there are links to Amazon, Apple Books. You can find the book anywhere on any of the online retailers. I'm doing events like this, so there's a news and media page with interviews and some written things that I've done on the website. Plus, I have another project I'm working on, so there's a teaser out there as well.
Perfect. And what advice then would you give to somebody that's maybe they're before that epiphany moment that you had, the golfing range, they're before there and they're struggling, but they don't know, they haven't had that moment yet, because not everybody has that moment. Sometimes people don't, but they need someone just to sometimes give them a nudge. What would you say to them?
I would say that I would tell the world, because when you tell the world will respond. Generally, the world will love you. They'll hold you accountable. They'll check in. Yeah. Whether it's telling the world that you're going to write a book, or that you're struggling with alcohol, or whatever it is, the world will check in with you. And when they ask you, how are you doing? Are you still sober? How's that book coming?
Yeah.
It's very important to have a good answer to that. Mm-hmm. And for me, I'm not going to lie, a lot of it's ego. You don't want to think that something got the better of you.
Yeah.
You want to, remain true to the things that you tell people. If you tell somebody you're going to write a book, you're going to do it. You honor your word. But at the end of the day, it's about the world filling you with support and love and understanding. Mm-hmm. A lot of people withhold those things from the world because they think the world will judge them. Well, that's not the case. The world will love you.
Yeah.
The world will admire what you're doing. Because you're telling the world that you're making a decision to live and
Hmm.
live well, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. So then how are you doing now then? How is everything now?
Everything is great. I have you know, two 11-year-old twins that I adore. Uh, Frankly, I there's nothing on the planet that I wouldn't want to do more than go to their soccer and baseball games.
Yeah.
Supporting them, watching them grow up. I dedicated the book to them. You
Hmm.
know, they're the reason why I know what love is. Like
Hmm.
you said, there's the love of a partner, but um, I can say that the love of a child is something different,
Yeah, I've heard
and
that
that has
before.
brought me a lot of comfort and a lot of happiness and a lot of purpose in my life. Frankly,
Yeah. No, that's really lovely to hear. And then just wanted to ask as well, from when you were, from obviously being sober, then, when you weren't, mentally, obviously that's it's very different headspaces and very different shifts. Were you able to really identify the difference, with your mind as well?
oh, absolutely. And I'll answer this in context of kind of what
Yeah.
the goal that you have right now in running a half marathon. I was always sort of a fitness person my whole
Yeah.
life, and a lot of time in the gym. I spent a lot of time doing athletic things, but running was never something I was very good at because, especially at the end or the last couple of years of my struggle with alcohol, it was impossible for me to go out on a run because I couldn't get myself into a mental space that was one healthy. And to run and to be good at it, you really have to get out there and divorce yourself with thoughts, uh, and just have to sort of go. And in my sort of diseased state at the time, it was very difficult to do that. So running was not enjoyable. It was a chore. I didn't have the endurance
Hmm.
mentally and physically to do it. And when I quit drinking, I found a love of running and competed in a number of marathons. I've done an ultra marathon, and it's a very cathartic and therapeutic tool in my
Yeah.
life. But I was
Yeah.
only able to do that after I was able to get into a better mental space, like you said.
Yeah, it's really interesting. That's a really interesting point that you made, actually, and you're right because I only noticed it. I only noticed it. I think it was either last week or the week before when I was running one day, and I think I got off, and I think I was on the treadmill, and I got off, and I thought to myself, "What did I just think about for a whole hour?" And I couldn't, nothing. I don't think I thought about. I mean, maybe thoughts here and there, but things that I could significantly remember,
Mm-hmm.
nothing. But that's I'm saying that's a good thing because it was almost like meditation for like nearly an hour. But I got off and I was just in shock at myself how nothing came in. But like I said, that was a good thing. And it showed me, and I spoke to a few other people who had the same, and it showed me that you're right. It's a way to clear your mind, and if your mind is clear, it's incredible what it can do.
And it's funny you mentioned that because I've spoken a lot about this very thing, and there's a wonderful quote out there that says it's very difficult to run and feel sorry for yourself at the same time.
Yeah.
And I'm the same as you. When I'm out there running, uh, I'm not thinking about my to-do list. I'm not worrying about the
Yeah.
future. I'm not regretting the past. I'm not,
Yeah.
all those things are what take you out of the present moment. And either it's anxiety for the future, fear, or regret, and sort of anger, or
Yeah.
unforgiven resentments for the past. So it's amazing what you do think about when those things
Yeah.
are not you're not capable of having those thoughts, like you said.
Yeah. And I think that's the important thing about whatever it is in life, whether it's running or whatever it is that you find, when you take those thoughts of the present or the future or not the present, of the past or the future or the to-do list or the work or anything that's negative or anxiety provoking, when you take those thoughts out, even if it's for 5 minutes, it's amazing what
Mm-hmm.
comes in. And it's amazing what comes in and where you can take your mind and your body, where you can take yourself in however many minutes or hours that moment is.
I couldn't agree more. If you were walking around my neighborhood, you would have seen me talking into my watch, because a lot of the inspiration for my book and a lot of the ways that I wanted to tell the stories that are in there came while I was running.
Yeah.
And I was just dictating random thoughts into my watch that I would later then go write about. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. See, I love things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I do. So is there anything else that you want to share or discuss today?
No, I'm just curious about your story too. I mean, tell me about your upcoming run.
Yeah, so I'm running my very first half marathon. Obviously,
Congratulations.
thank you. Depending on when this episode airs, it will either I would have already done it or I'll be in the process of leading up to it. But I'm going for my first half marathon, which it's interesting because I used to be somebody who, whenever I used to see people doing marathons or half marathons or running any further than 10 kilometers, I just used to think, wow, like I could never do that. I used to think it was impossible. I used to think I could never do it. I never want to put my mind through it. I never want to put my body through it. I never want to do it. And it's so interesting what happens when you then say to yourself, I'm going to do it.
Yep.
To kind of show up to fear. I think I was scared all the time. I was saying it was impossible. I think I was just scared I would fail, or I was scared my body couldn't do it, or I wouldn't have the mind, the capacity to do it. And, once you show up to fear and you say, okay, here's the fear, I'm gonna do it anyway. But yeah, so to be able for me to, like I said, with all of that in mind, but then also February, it's not long actually. The 25th of February is my year anniversary to my second knee operation. So my double knee operation. So to be, also somebody that has had 2 knee operations, I relearned how to walk and I didn't walk for 10 weeks. And then to now be running a half marathon, I think that is as well for me. It's to show myself like that, just what I'm capable of, especially my legs, my knees, but also I want to show other people as well. It's to show everybody else that there is hope, and life can knock you down, but not only can you get back up, but you can get back up stronger and better and happier and just than ever before.
Yeah, absolutely. Congratulations. It takes a lot of strength. It takes a lot of faith in yourself. It certainly proves that you're in a very good mental place, and it proves you're sort of fearless, right? I think there's a wonderful another wonderful running quote. The entire last chapter of my book is about running. It's called The Road. But the quote is, the difference between those of us at the starting line and those of us on the couch is that we learn through running to take what the day gives us, what our body will allow us, and what our will tolerate. And all of those are very different things. Like your body can tell you one thing, but there's always another gear that the human body can go into. And it can do, pretty cool things, honestly.
Yeah. I love that you said that, because I'm doing a training plan, and the run I had this morning was to run 10 kilometers. And it was 10 kilometers. I did it on the treadmill. And for some reason this morning, after 3.5 kilometers, my body was just, I could tell my body didn't want to continue. And it's really interesting that you said this quote today, because I remember it's 3.5 kilometers in, and my body didn't want to continue, and it's opposite the mirror, the treadmill, and I remember looking at myself and saying to myself, I could so give up. My body is tired, but it's telling yourself and shifting your gear, knowing, but I can do this. I might feel tired, but I can do this. And like slowly, I put the speed higher and higher and higher, and then every time I put the speed up one bit more, I was able to kind of sit back and think about myself and say, my body is telling me it's really tired, but I'm getting faster and faster. So there's there's something else going on here that's not just tired. And that was my point, was that you're right. You can shift up and you can level up a gear without sometimes even realizing, but you can continue to do things without even, your body can do amazing things.
Yeah. I mean, I can tell you that all of my best runs were when I felt the worst to start.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it is. One time I heard something that made a lot of sense to me, that when you run with love in your heart, that is the greatest fuel of all. It's not like some people think that getting under a bench press and getting angry and, and conjuring up all these negative emotions that will help you release them and, using that as your energy source. But no, when you run from the heart, when you run from a position of love, I think that, that is the greatest fuel of all. And I think, I said that those runs where I felt the worst were the best runs. I think it was the release of, bad emotions. And, I don't know.
Yeah, sometimes it is. Sometimes there isn't an answer. I know. I don't know what you mean. Sometimes it's not a thought. You can't say it in words, but you just know how it made you feel.
Well, it's I think making, for me, I don't know. It was like making more space for positive energy was what fueled me the most. Again, running from the heart, running from love, having, good thoughts fuel you. There's a lot of stories in my book about things that I've encountered while running that absolutely feel like a shot in the arm of adrenaline, right?
Yeah. Definitely. Definitely. Well, my next run's in 2 days, so I'm gonna run from. I'm gonna make sure I run completely from the heart in 2 days' time.
Exactly.
But I think it's if you're like you've said, you're running from the heart, running with love. It's the positivity that's fueling you rather than the negativity that's.
Yeah.
Because negativity in general, I mean, yeah, it's great to push a heavy weight, but how much can you sustain the negativity? The positivity is the thing that fuels you forward.
Yeah. And it's probably, I just remember some of those greatest runs. I've just felt, I was kind of pissed off about something during the day, or I was, feeling sorry for myself, or just feeling, bad place. And then once you go, it seems like it's all that go, like you rid yourself of it. But again, that's not the primary energy source. It's making way for it's getting all of those negative emotions out of the way so the positive ones can fuel you. I know that sounds sort of esoteric and weird, but like for me, that's been my experience, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Believe me, some of the runs I've done, I was in one, headspace before, and then as soon as I was finished, I just felt amazing. And those thoughts could still come, but they didn't make me feel at all the same.
Yeah, you're just kind of okay with it, right?
Yeah, exactly. You're just okay with it. So it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you today. Thank you so much for joining me and for sharing your story. And if anyone can grab a copy of the book, then definitely do, because I think these kind of books are amazing for people in every way. So thank you.